Welcome back to class. In this class, we would now look at the sprint review. The sprint review. In the last two classes, we looked at first the sprint planning, which is to plan the sprint. The sprint itself is the duration of work. So the sprint planning is to plan the work that needs to be done. Then in the last class, we looked at the daily stand-up or daily scrum, which is an inspective adaptive meeting, a 15-minute time-boxed meeting, where we ask those three questions. What did you do yesterday? What do you want to do today? Then, do you have any problem or challenge? And I laid emphasis that those narratives should be towards the sprint goal. Please, that's important. We shouldn't forget that. So in this class, which is the sprint review, and in the sprint review, the review itself is a feedback to the stakeholders. It's a feedback to the stakeholders. And the review happens at the end of the sprint. Mind you, the sprint planning happens at the beginning of the sprint. It commences the sprint. Daily stand-up happens every day of the sprint. Sprint review happens at the end of the sprint. So what's the sprint review? In the duration of a sprint, the team has been able to develop or produce a value, or developed or generated, they've been able to generate a value. It is now time for the team to meet with the stakeholders and present what they have developed of the value they've been able to demonstrate. So we can see from this picture the team demonstrating a value, tangible value to their stakeholders or business or end users. So who would be in that meeting? On the stakeholders end, the stakeholder could have different personalities, business, management team, different departments, any other person that has interest. Mind you, a definition of a stakeholder is anyone with vested interest in a project or a product or any tangible thing is a stakeholder. But on the team's end, we have the product owner, the scrum master, and the developers meeting with the stakeholders. You know, before this, we earlier said that the product owner is continuously engaging with the stakeholders and with the team, and it serves as a link between the two. So while in development in the course of the sprint, some improvements may come, some adjustments may come, and the product owner is communicating both. But this time around, during the sprint review, the team, the entire team, is meeting with the stakeholders or representative of the stakeholders and presenting demonstrating a value that had been developed in the course of the sprint. Now, two things happen in the sprint review. Most persons capture the sprint review as just one event, but two things happen there. The first thing that happens is to align the process, the product that is being developed with the stakeholders. So the product owner actually leads that conversation where, of course, when the product owner is not around, the scrum master could lead or the tech lead could lead, as the case could be. So the first thing that happens in the sprint review is that the team takes the stakeholders through the board, what they were to commit to, what they were able to complete, what is left for them to complete if there is any, and then shed some light when that would be delivered. Let me take that again. So during the sprint review, the team is engaging with the team, the stakeholders, telling them, oh, in the course of us going into the last sprint, we committed to these stories and we were looking at delivering these specifics. And at the end of the sprint, we were able to deliver these ones, leaving out these ones, right? And these two other ones, we intend to take it further into the next sprint and complete it in the next sprint. And in the next sprint, we're looking at bringing some other ones. So the sprint review, one, is an event that brings both the team and the stakeholders together and align work and let everyone be on the same page. That is the first thing that happens in the sprint review. So the stakeholder can also give feedback. Okay, we'll like this adjustment and the rest. That's one thing. The second thing that happens is the actual demonstration. Pardon me. Where is the board again? Okay. Is the actual demonstration of value. Mind you, at the beginning of the sprint, the team committed that they were going to develop so and so feature. At the end of the sprint, they should be able to develop that. So they are now coming back to demonstrate that. So in some organizations, they refer to the sprint review as demo session. Some organizations could call it showcase. So you could hear showcase, they are making reference to the sprint review. And when you hear demo, they are also making reference to the sprint review. So those two things take place in the sprint review. And in the course of this conversation, the stakeholders are able to give the team the first-hand feedback, what they want to be done. For instance, in this picture, while the team was demonstrating this, suddenly the stakeholder felt, oh, how about we move this name at the top of the app, we move it down. So that's a feedback coming back to the developer. So they will need to note that down. The product owner captures that down. Of course, the Scrum Master should also take his own notes as a reference and as a guide for the product owner. And this feedback becomes a new work item to be taken further into the product backlog. In one of the previous classes, one of the trainees asked, the feedback that comes from the stakeholders, where would it go to? Will it go into a new sprint, or will it go into an active sprint, or will it go into a backlog? The most appropriate place for it to go to is the product backlog. Mind you, the sprint review is happening at the end of the sprint. So it's either the sprint has been closed or the sprint is about to be closed. So the feedback harvested from the stakeholders is best to go to the product backlog, and in the next sprint planning session, it would be prioritized along with other stories. For instance, the stakeholder could say, we want this to move down, but it may not be the highest priority to be worked on now. So that needs to be captured down. If it becomes the highest priority or what needs to be done now, it moves up on the priority list and that gets the needed attention. So again, the best place to put the feedback from the stakeholder at sprint review is to go to the product backlog and be reprioritized, should be redeveloped into the stories and reprioritize again. Now let's look at few other things we need to consider in the sprint review. I've spoken about demonstration, where the team demonstrates value to the stakeholders and gather feedback from the stakeholder. You are demonstrating value, what had been done in the course of the sprint. Somebody gave you a work, you are now meeting again with that person, the work continues, but a piece of that work should be demonstrated. In the illustration we've been using, building a house, let's say for instance we run a 1 weekly sprint. At the end of the 1 week, let's say on a Friday, the stakeholders would visit the site and see what work had been done. So you want to demonstrate to them what had been carried on within that week. Perhaps in the last week, there was no soakaway that had been dug, or there was no septic tank. So while you were going into the sprint planning, you discussed that you made the septic tank and soakaway the sprint goal. So this time around, the stakeholders are coming back to the site on Friday, and you want to show them the septic tank and the soakaway you have done. And they get there, oh, you've done this, and they check. If they need to tell you to make adjustments, they may ask you to make adjustments to the width, they may ask you to make adjustments to the length, or the breadth, or the scale, or the direction, or whatever it is. They will give you feedback on it. I've also mentioned this, the product backlog review, where all the feedback goes into the product backlog. And about all through Agile and Scrum, your product backlog is expected to be flexible, to be adaptable, so that it can accommodate new stories or new requirements or new specifications. Your product backlog should be adaptable. So these are some of the things we need to go through. Then collaboration on product direction, because you're having the feedback firsthand. You're having the feedback firsthand from the stakeholders. The sprint review is often 1 hour. It depends on what the structure of the organization is. In some organizations that have scaled Agile, a sprint review session could last as much as 2 hours, 2.5 hours, sometimes 3 hours. But so there is, okay, let's say ideally 1 hour. But I would, okay. Then of course, sprint review ensures that transparency and open communication between the team and the stakeholders. All right, that would be all for this class. Just as a quick review, we saw and we started with this diagram where the team comes together to meet with the stakeholders and demonstrate the value that had been developed in the course of the sprint, but also the transparency of work process, where they share with the stakeholder work that was committed to, work that had been done, what plans they have next to deliver. That is where the reviewing comes to play. If you have any questions, please note them down and please send them across to me. We'll see again in the next class. Thank you.